Studios. This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft on AM 560. The Answer.
AM 560, The Answer. This is Chris Crocken for Dan Proft on Chicago's Morning Answer. Well, I always love talking to this guy. It's been a little bit since we last talked, but here he is, Scott McKay from the Hayride. He's the publisher of the Hayride.com, senior editor at the American Spectator, and author of the brand new novel, Blockbusters, which is available at Amazon. And Scott, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Chris, thanks for having me.
Yes. Now, it's great because last time I talked with you on The Answer was when, with the shutdown in the early days, the Schumer shutdown with the sombreros, you were talking about appropriations bills, and a couple could be passed and this and that. So I want to get into that with you. But the first thing I want to do is say, I'm going to correct you on something, because you said the Democrats shut the government down and they got nothing. That is not true. They got, for example, let's see here. Where is my, hold on one second. I got a couple different pieces. Here, I'm going to play you something. This is a little montage, but you got to wait for the best part. Hold on.
This is a moral choice. A choice by the Trump administration built on cruelty. Shame on this president, and shame on congressional Republicans that are enabling him to do this to the American people.
That's Congressman Tim Kennedy, but listen to this. Hold on.
I'm standing here today. I'm horrified by what is happening in our country.
We know someone that actually was climbing into the dumpster to find food, and that just broke our heart.
So they did do something. They had people climbing through dumpsters to get food. They did get something out of it. They got that, and they got this obese woman who's 100-plus pounds overweight standing on a street corner in New York City saying this.
It's really bad.
Danielle Grant is starving.
I'm trying to see if I can get some food, because we literally don't have anything to eat today or tomorrow. So we're going to try to make it.
So the Democrats shut the government down for 43-plus days or whatever it was, Scott, and they did get to get people dumpster diving and obese people starving. They did get something, sir. You're wrong about that.
Oh, no. You're right about that. They got the circus is what they got. I mean, this was a 6-week run of Barnum and Bailey coming to town with some of the weirdest rhetoric I think I've ever seen. And what was so funny when this thing collapsed was that the Republican shutdown led to all of the Democrat base voters being mad at their people for ending it, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's like, but wait, you said it was the Republicans that shut the thing down, and now you're mad that it's over because your side collapsed, right?
It makes perfect sense. I got to add one more thing on that. Here's one of the constituents who you just kind of talked about. They're mad as hell that they shut the government down but then reopened. Here we go.
I'm done. I am your base. I have voted for Democrats for 40 years. I am a lesbian with a black, disabled, non-binary child, and I worked in an abortion clinic. I am your base, and I'm done.
Happy Friday, lady.
She's the trifecta. She's lesbian. She loves abortion. She has a black child. I mean, it's all over the place.
Absolutely at the top of the intersectional totem pole, and she's done. So, be very afraid. It's one of these things where, first of all, we know that they held this thing this thing down until after that election cycle so that they could win. I mean, they had to win Virginia, and they didn't really have the candidates to do it because Abigail Spanberger is a mess.
Yes.
I mean, you talk about an absolute with zero charisma, this woman, and she was up against Winsome Sears, who isn't a great candidate, okay, but it's not that, like, Sears scared them because she was another Glenn Youngkin. Sears scared them because the Democrats cannot have the Republicans electing a black woman as a statewide, like, top of the ticket official, right? Whether it's a senator or a governor or something, like, they cannot have that because contra the lesbian abortion clinic worker and her statements, the real base of the Democrat Party, defined as we get all of this vote, is black women. And so when Winsome Sears runs and wins as lieutenant governor, that was bad. Winsome Sears running and winning as governor of Virginia, like, that's much worse. And so they had a lever, which is you have all these federal workers in Virginia that, you know, are out of a job for 6 weeks with the shutdown, and they have nothing to do, since the vast majority of them are going to be Democrats. They have nothing to do all day but get involved in that election. And so you had an absolute flood of campaign workers, and you had a flood of voters who were super motivated. But, like, it wasn't just Spanberger. There's, like, the lieutenant governor, I can't remember what her name is, but she's like a pro-Hamas Muslim lady. And then you had Jay Jones running for attorney general, who you know, wants to kill the Republican Speaker of the House and his
great
children.
Guy. Great guy.
So that was their ticket. And, you know, just to look at that, you'd say, well, if you couldn't win with the three that you had 4 years ago, you're going to have some trouble with these three. And so, like, they needed this. It turned out it worked. I mean, they won big in two of those three races and one, you know, small in the other. But like, they could not afford to lose Virginia this year, and they didn't. And of course, New Jersey, they were going to win New Jersey, but for a while that looked touch and go. And then they had other races around the country that, you know, they were able to win, largely because Republican voters really didn't turn out. Their party is still in the toilet approval-wise, though. And this is kind of a Pyrrhic victory. I don't know that Virginia is worth the damage that the Democrats have done to themselves with this shutdown, because their base is furious at them. And it was always going to go this way. Because they, you know, other than getting great media coverage, which they did, and, you know, having some polls say that Republicans were responsible for the shutdown, which is a result of the media coverage. Like, they had no leverage. They never had it. And so all you had to do was wait them out, knowing that their people are the ones that were going to suffer the most as the effects of the shutdown could no longer be mitigated. You know, other than the airports, which, I mean, Republicans fly as often or maybe more often than Democrats, and that was starting to get all gummed up. Pretty much everything else was going to hit Democrat voters much harder than Republican voters. And they knew that, so it was like, why did you do it? And the answer was Chuck Schumer didn't want to get turned out of his job, which was the threat after he refused to filibuster the last budget CR. And so he said, okay, well, I'll give you what you want. And he did. And it didn't really help him to help the government close for 6 months or 6 weeks, because they really don't like him now.
Well, I wanted to ask you this too, Scott McKay, publisher of the Hayride, senior editor at the American Spectator, author of the brand new novel Blockbusters, available on Amazon. The Republicans, you know, next month they're going to be voting in December, as you know, allowing a vote on Obamacare, which is, as you know, is a disaster. Everything we were told is the opposite. It didn't bend the cost. It increased it by about, I think, $250, $350 on average per month, per year, per person. Will the Republicans cave and end up renewing the subsidies that the Democrats purposely voted to sunset, which is their fault? Will they cave? Or do you think that Trump's idea of HSAs, which I love, but it seems like that's not going to happen. It's a pipe dream, but Trump's idea. What do you think is going to happen with that?
Well, the thing to understand is that the Democrats will filibuster any significant reform bill that the Republicans bring on health care. And the other thing to understand is that Obamacare is working exactly as it was intended.
Yes.
Obamacare is a time bomb.
Yes.
That is intended to explode the private medical system in this country and bring in single payer.
Yep.
Like that. I mean, it's taken maybe longer than they thought, but it's working the way they wanted. And so the point is to immiserate as many people as possible and make everybody scared to death that they're going to die in the streets. And then you offer them single payer and they'll take it because they just don't see any other way. You could never communize the healthcare sector the way the Democrats want to do on a straight up, hey, should we do this kind of vote? Like, they're going to lose that every time. So, it's the same reason, like, everybody who calls themselves an anarchist is actually a communist. They want the anarchy from which they can have communism. And that's what Obamacare is. It's an anarchist, communist, anarcho-communist healthcare plan. And so, you were able to get through the shutdown without nuking the filibuster. But I don't think that you can do a repeal and replace type of program with Obamacare without nuking the filibuster, because the Democrats will literally filibuster anything. If somebody could come up with an idea like, okay, here's how we can, through the private sector, get everybody covered healthcare wise for a pittance, the Democrats would filibuster that because it's not what they want. And like, everybody on Capitol Hill knows this. The question is, like, what do we do about it? And the problem is that you're going to have a vote next month, and it's right before next year when everybody's premiums go sky high. And once you're into next year, it's a panic situation in an election year. So, like, I would not be surprised if there is some sort of modified limited hangout cave pushing this a year. I don't want to see that, but I don't know what they've got up their sleeve that gets around this, unless it's just, we've got a plan, we're going to pass it, we're going to nuke the filibuster, and then we're going to save everybody all this money on their premiums next year. That would be the smart play, because it would disrupt the narrative that's being built, particularly like among pundits on the right, which is, where is the Trump revolution? Right? Like, where's all the stuff that we were promised? Like, we hadn't even gotten the Epstein files. You guys aren't doing anything. If you nuke the filibuster and put in a real healthcare plan, and it's not like you can't dust off any one of 6 or 7 of them that the Republicans have had over the years, and any of them would be better than what we have now. If they were to do that, then I think it would open some eyes. But these guys, they're conservative in more than just politics, right? Like, they're timid is sort of the natural state of being. And so either we're going to get surprised or we're not going to get surprised and we're going to be disappointed.
So, I mean, you look at the subsidies, and in Phoenix, for example, a family of 4 making up to $600,000.
Oh, I know.
Is getting our money to subsidize their Obamacare garbage. I mean, you're pulling in $600,000. You're in Phoenix. You're driving a Porsche Cayenne. You're in a 5,000 square foot house, and people like you and me are paying for their frickin' health care, which is disgusting. West Virginia, a married couple making up to $580,000 a year in West Virginia, which is like making $1 million in Chicago or D.C. We're subsidizing their health care. A single person in Vermont, $180,000. This is filthy and it's disgusting. That, number one, you comment on that.
I do think they're going to, Chris, I do think that they'll trim that stuff back because it's easy. And if I'm the Democrats, I don't fight that because I don't know how I preserve any of my narratives if I do that. But to preserve the system with subsidies on folks that aren't, 500-600% of the poverty line, right? Like, that's the part I'm talking about. Like, if the family of 4 making $60,000 a year who have an Obamacare policy that's going to triple or something like that. If you can't fundamentally change Obamacare in a month, which you still have 9 appropriations bills to pass. You may end up buying some time so that those people don't take to the streets. And I like that part. I do think they'll do something to kick the can down the road, just because I don't think they've got enough time and runway to get a full-on repeal and replace on Obamacare passed. Not to mention the fact I don't have any confidence in the Senate Republican caucus, where you have to get Tom Tillis and Mitch McConnell and Lisa Murkowski and Susan Collins to vote for something that would fundamentally change public policy in America. Like, I have zero faith that those people will actually come aboard.
Do you in any way, you mentioned the filibuster blowing it up, do you really think they should do that? Because to me, that's like the idea that the Democrats are going to do that anyway, so we should do it, is really stupid, and we shouldn't. But you tell me why I could be wrong on that, or what are your thoughts?
Well, I actually do think it's a valid argument, because we know that the Democrats will nuke the filibuster when they get the chance. Like, we know they will. They all they do is complain about how they didn't nuke it in the first 2 years of Joe Biden. So I think that they absolutely will. But there's a middle ground here that should be explored, which is a physical filibuster. In other words, you make these people do Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. They've got, 47 Democrats, or 45, and then 2 independents, Bernie Sanders and Angus King, who caucus with the Democrats. And you make them take turns speaking until they drop on the Senate floor. And when they've all done that, that's the end of the filibuster. Enough of these people are septuagenarians and octogenarians that they're not going to be speaking all that long. So, I mean, if this thing is going to go 6 weeks with a filibuster, you just make them speak. And okay, we're going to call a question as soon as you guys don't have anybody can speak. And that's like a real filibuster. Like, we're going back to the 60s when the Democrats filibustered the civil rights bills. You make them do that. Like, that was at the end of this thing, that was sort of what everybody was saying was, well, look, there's another. You don't have to nuke the filibuster altogether, but you make these people actually speak on the floor until they can't do it anymore. And when they've all had a turn, that's it, right? And, it's hardball, but to me, that's what I'm going to do before I nuke it altogether. Now, it's the same sort of principle. Once you've done that, understand that the Democrats will make you do it when you're in the minority.
Yeah, right.
But you do preserve the institution that way. And I think it's probably a better intermediate step. But here's the question. Do you have enough votes among that weak caucus of yours to even get that? And, that's the point. You should have no faith in these people. And I'm not a big John Thune fan, but I'm at least sympathetic to the fact that when you have 4 or 5 traitors in your midst and you've got to coddle these people just to get to 51 or 50 plus 1 with Vice President Vance showing up to break a tie. What exactly can our expectations of that caucus be?
Real quickly, Scott, I wanted to ask you this. There's no there in the Epstein files for Trump. It would have been released under Biden and all. So many. It's what a disgrace and what a joke with this. And I love this. Breaking. Oversight Democrats have received new emails. Flash, exclusive breaking news from Jeffrey Epstein's estate. But why doesn't there's nothing there? I love how they redacted Virginia Giuffre's name, even though it's already been publicly said in the same thing. But why does Trump?
And she's dead. They redacted the name of somebody who's dead, who'd already gone public as one of Epstein's girls, and who had already said Trump never did anything. He was a perfect gentleman every time I was around him. And the other thing is on these emails, it's like hilarious. Epstein's complaining that Trump is the dog that doesn't bark. And it's like, okay, so do you guys know what that means? It means the dog is supposed to bark. Why isn't the dog barking? This is scary that the dog is not barking. And real quick about Trump.
Real quickly, we got like 30 seconds. Why does Trump not want to release all the files? And then I saw that what's his name, Dershowitz, says that it's because the judge has to, release it and unseal everything. But you tell me.
Well, that part is true, but the other part of it is there's a bunch of false accusations in here, and so releasing the files makes this massive mess. And the other thing is I don't know this, but I've read it is. You've got a bunch of the victims that absolutely positively do not want to go public.
Right, exactly.
And releasing all the files is going to cause that. And so, I think it's a collateral damage thing. And it's reasonable to try to be somewhat cautious about this, but it's frustrating as hell.
Scott McKay, publisher of the Hayride.com, senior editor at the American Spectator, and author of the brand new novel Blockbusters, available at Amazon. Thanks, brother. Appreciate you. Always fun having you on.
Thanks, Chris. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Yes, amen to that. Up next, America's bishops, Catholic bishops, express opposition. It's a rare thing for them to come out and make a big statement. They did, and it's all about the illegals. That is coming up next. It's Chris Crocken for Dan Proft on AM 560, The Answer.
There's only one radio show in Chicago talking about today's biggest stories and telling you what they really mean. That show is this one.